So from the 1st of April, the TV license is going to increase by £10.50 a year. It will cost £169.50. Now, this is the first increase we've had for a good few years. The government froze the license fee. They didn't let it increase at all, not even with inflation over the last few years. So this, again, for the first time, this is kind of something we have to kind of be thinking about here. And I know that a lot of people think that is, again, a lot of money that I'm spending on top of all the other bills that I've got, on top of the other streaming services and entertainment services that I've got. Is this something that I kind of want to keep paying? What I'm going to take you through in this video is whether you need one. I want to talk to you about how you can cancel it if you wish to cancel it. But I'm also going to talk to you about why I think you should stick with it if you can afford it. Because even at that £169.50 a year, which is about £14.13 a month, which sounds a lot, you do get a lot for that compared to some of the other services. So we'll come back to that. But first of all, let's talk about who needs a TV license. Do you actually have to have one? Well, the rules are if you watch any live television or use BBC's iPlayer, you must have a TV license. Now, any live TV includes when you record it. So you can't get around it that way. Anything that has basically been broadcast out live as it is, that counts as live TV across any channel. So not just the BBC, but also ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, the Sky channels, Amazon, when they show sport. I think Netflix is doing some live things as well. Anything where it's live, that counts as live TV, right? This is also bizarrely, you might have think about it, even YouTube. YouTube sometimes, I know TNT Sport often show the Champions League final for free on there. You'd need a TV license to watch that as it goes out live. Now, not other things. So if you watch one of my live Q&As on YouTube and you join that in, you won't need a TV license. But live television broadcasts, you absolutely do. And in terms of on demand, I say only BBC iPlayer. So if you are watching stuff just digitally and it's from a couple of days ago, yes, if it's on the iPlayer, you have to have a license fee. Anything else, you are absolutely fine. You don't need it. Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't watch any live TV. I just watch on demand and I don't use iPlayer, or you think you can get away with not watching iPlayer. There's things on there you're not so bothered about, then you can cancel it. It is a relatively easy thing to do. You go to the TV licensing website and you fill in a form. You might also have to declare that you aren't watching live TV, and there's a chance they might come around and check that you're not lying as well. And if you are lying about it and they find out, then you get a hefty fee. So don't lie about it. Only cancel it if you're not going to use it. But that can happen, and then you will be saving obviously that cash. And in fact, if you have already paid for part of your license fee, as long as there's more than 1 month left of it, you might even pay by direct debits, but you sign up for a year, basically 12 months for a license fee, and then you'll be able to get a refund on those other months as well. So it may well be that you can get some cash back by cancelling your license fee. So saving money as well as not spending it. One other thing over here as well, though, in terms of like reducing how much the license fee costs, there are also some people who can get reductions. So if you only have, I don't know who would have this, but a black and white TV, you can get a reduction there. If you have sight issues, you can get a reduction there as well. And if you are over 75 and receive pension credit, you will also be eligible for a free license fee, free TV license. So you won't pay anything at all. Now, it's very worth looking at if you're over 75 just to see if you are eligible for pension credit, because it's not just about getting a free TV license. It's about warm home discounts, potentially other kind of housing benefit costs that can come through. Actual pension credit cash itself might come along. So that is most important. So if you are over 75 or know someone who's over 75 who is on a low income, absolutely get them to sort of look into pension credit, and then from there get in touch with the TV license over 75s unit to get that license fee for free. So that is kind of if you need it or don't need it. So I guess the next question is, should you ditch it? Should you stick with it? And I think what a lot of people will be thinking here is about the alternatives first of all, right? How does that price, that £14.13 equivalent, if you divide it by 12 months, how does that actually compare to other streaming services and entertainment services? Well, it's actually cheaper than Netflix's top tier, the one which lets you stream and lots of different at the same time. That costs $17.99. It gives you the full 4K and all this stuff where relevant. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. I don't think anyone should be on that top tier of Netflix, the vast majority of cases, particularly since it's so much harder to share that with other people now and split the costs. So it is cheaper than that top Netflix. After that, the next most expensive ones are the top tier of Disney and the middle tier of Netflix, which are $10.99 a month. So obviously they cost a little bit less. Now's Entertainment, which is basically streaming of Sky services. Remember, as long as you don't watch the live stuff and just on demand, that's fine. That is $9.99 a month. But if you want HD and to watch on multiple devices, an extra £6 boost on top of that. Although, as I tell you guys quite regularly, there are always deals and hacks to bring that down. So I think realistically, you would be paying, under a tenner for that. Although there's cinema on top is another $9.99, and sports, which we'll come back to, is another £34 a month. So actually, that could be a lot more expensive. And then you've got Prime Video without the adverts. You pay a little bit extra for that, or Apple TV. They both come in about £9 a month. So when you look at it that way financially, you can think, well, again, it's one of the most expensive services out there. The other ones, I'll be saving money by choosing those instead, as long as, and again, something I talk about with you guys quite often is trying not to have more than one streaming service at any time, because how can you possibly watch everything that's on there if you are splitting between them all? I would just have pick one, binge it, cancel it, pick one, binge it, cancel it, and move around like that. Of course, when you are comparing different streaming and TV services, it's not just about price, is it? Because content is so important. The reason you'll go for these different services often is because you want to watch a particular show over here or another one over there. And I think you've got to remember that the license fee comes into play there. So I'm a bit of a geek. So at the end of 2023, I actually did a list of my favorite TV shows, and there were ones from all the different services. Top shows I love from Netflix, like Beef, from Disney Plus, like, I can't remember what it's called now, Extraordinary, all sort of Amazon, Apple, things I loved on all those different shows. Paramount, even Frasier was really good. But actually, a good chunk of them, the majority of the shows I really loved, were actually from the BBC. So this is something really important to remember about. If you're thinking about ditching the license fee completely, you won't be able to watch these shows, at least originally. They might come later on to the other streaming services, but originally, so things like Traitors, Race Across the World, Ghosts, some of the big sporting events, the Olympics in 2024. I love Wimbledon every year. You might not like sport, but we'll come back to this in a second. But again, there are a lot of really, really big shows as well that if you do ditch the license fee, you won't be able to watch. So that's something to think about as well. And you've got to weigh up again how important it is, the cost of it, how much you can afford in order to cover that, to watch those shows. But the other thing I want to talk about here as well, effectively in not defense of the license fee, because is the BBC perfect? No, it's not. Okay, it really isn't. There are lots of things that could be sort of done differently and could be changed. Some of that is going to be down to external pressures, such as that freezing of the license fee over the last few years means they've got less money, which means they need to make cuts, which makes some content not as good as it used to be. Still some excellent stuff, but obviously we'll have our own opinions on whether it's as good as it was. But the important thing to remember, I think, with the license fee is it's not just about TV. Yes, you only need it for watching live TV and the iPlayer, but it's not just about that. You get BBC Radio, BBC Sounds, BBC children's stuff against TV, but the children's side of things, the sport, the news, the website. There are things that they do in terms of development and innovation. So think about when you watch like Blue Planet or those nature shows and this amazing thing that's under the water with this camera. Well, that's probably technology that was developed by the BBC. iPlayer itself, all these streaming services, that's come off the back of innovation within the BBC, which means this technology develops and it goes out there. Again, so we're kind of paying for that as well a little bit, which helps us with other things later on. So what I thought I would do is, this isn't the actual breakdown of the license fee, but I'd want to give you kind of what I feel gives a kind of a price, like a decent price for each of those different elements for me personally. And maybe you could do the same. And then when you look at those prices, you compare them to costs elsewhere, it might make that £14.13 a month feel not as expensive as it might first seem. So what I'm giving a value to TV, BBC television and iPlayer of £7 a month. I think that brings it cheaper than all the other services. And I think there's always stuff to watch on there, always good content. There's always a box set, new or old, documentaries, dramas, comedies. There's always something that I'd want to watch. I think £7 a month is really, I think, really decent value. Then when you look at this BBC radio, I listen to Six Music all the time. It's basically my go-to, whatever I'm doing. If I'm not doing recording, things like that, I've got Six Music on. But BBC Sounds, a lot of great podcasts they're creating. Even if you don't listen to them on BBC Sounds or on BBC Radio, you might listen to them on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or whatever it might be. But BBC original ones, which are great there. That one I've given in my mind a value of £3.50. £3.50 is way, 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 way cheaper than how much we'd all be paying for those music streaming services. And also, importantly, there's no adverts. You might be absolutely fine with commercial radio with adverts. I hate adverts, which is why, paying some money every month doesn't feel like a burden for me. Sport, I've given this a token, £2 a month. What's that, 24 quid a year? Now, this could happen in the future, right? If the BBC lost the rights to things. But if you wanted to watch Wimbledon for 2 weeks in the summer, or we've got a World Cup this year as well, haven't we? And you were told it would cost you 24 quid for a month. That would probably be cheap. We're talking about an entire year. Again, tokenistic, I'm saying 24. You might give it a higher value in your breakdown. But I think, with the Olympics, World Cup, Wimbledon, things like that, let alone the stuff that's going on throughout the year, the journalism, the match of the day, things like that, I think that is a really good price. News is one of the most controversial ones, isn't it? If you're on the left, you think it's too right-wing. If you're on the right, you think it's too left-wing. Definitely, I don't feel it's as good as it used to be. But when there's a big national event, something happening on a day, the Queen's funeral, or going back further, the pandemic, where did we go? The majority of the time, it's going to be BBC News. Yes, there are Sky News and other options as well. But let's say you pay £12 a year, £1 a month to access the TV and online news. I think you think that was a bit of a bargain, right? And kids, I don't have kids, but I would happily pay £6 a year, 50p a month. So when my niece and nephew visit, they can watch those shows that are on there. And you've got to remember as well, a lot of the other services, if you do want to add on sport or children's, you're paying extra for another pass on top of that. And finally, I talked about those online and those extra things that do, like the innovation stuff. I've just said, right, I need to find 13p, right? Because that's to add up to a cost of 13 a month. Right, you go 13 pence a month for all of that other stuff. So checking the weather, checking the football scores. Admittedly, I don't do that on the BBC website as much as I used to, but it's there if I need to. And other kind of assets and features are on there. So again, that's my take on it. You might have a very, very different view on whether how you portion it up, it still represents value for money. But I would definitely encourage you to think about that, because the difference is and I think BBC is a moment of kind of big crisis. It's been in crisis for a long time, right? But all these other streaming services coming along, the pressure on them, the cuts that have been happening over the years, does mean that at some point this is going to have to change, and you'll have to have a different format. I don't know what it would be. It'll be more expensive than it is now if they were going to continue offering the same things. But if we don't pay for these services, there'll be more cuts and more things will disappear. And if you've ever watched TV in another country, you'll realize just how awful it is, how many advert breaks there are, how we think the news is impartial here, how much more impartial it is in some of those other countries. So I definitely encourage you to think about the benefit of paying for it now, even if you don't use it a huge amount. If you can afford it, all the extras we get from it as a society, I think are really, really important. But with that really, really important caveat in there, if you can afford it, if you are struggling, and we're all struggling right now, right? If you are really struggling and you do feel that you can go without those services, then there is no point continuing to pay it. Make sure you do go in and apply to cancel that license fee, hopefully get a bit of a refund. And that will obviously be more money in your pocket, but just be a bit careful and cautious, as I say, with your other streaming services, and don't have too many of them. Cancelling Sky TV as well at the same time, get that down, because that's really expensive for what you get for it. Lots of things you can do to kind of reduce the overall entertainment bills, so there's more for everything else. My name's Andy Webb. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these videos here for more ways to save on your entertainment.